Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Koenigsberg, and I welcome all of you to our second monthly webinar in a series that is celebrating the 10th anniversary of Initiatives in Art and Culture's annual Gold and now Gold and Diamond Conference. This series is titled All That Glitters. And it is, as I love to say, a child of COVID. It is something wonderfully positive that has come out of a period of turmoil. And it is not meant to replace the conference, but to supplement and augment and to further enhance community and conversation, to which we are so committed. This is, for us, if you will, a decade of building communities that consider value, values, and the way forward. So today, the question that we are going to address, or the topic, is the worth of gold and diamonds. Beautiful things need to be pure, not just in carat, but in heart. And that last bit is a quote from Cherie Blair. She said that in Basel in 2018. And these are issues that have been of concern to IAC for 15 years. And they are among the most central questions we consider. The relationship of materials produced or extracted and used, how we determine that worth, the value played by artistry, and how our values can positively impact that which is being put forward in the marketplace. It was neatly summarized as a discussion of how a brand's authentic expression of values impacts the worth of gold and diamond jewelry in the mind of the consumer. But this is a package that represents many issues, and we promise you that we will return to this topic. Having said that, I cannot imagine a better group of people to have come together to discuss these issues. And I'm very honored to be introducing them. Before I do so, however, I'd like to say a word of thanks to De Beers because we have developed this in collaboration with them. They have been our partner and have spurred us on with this idea. And we hope that we will stay on this road together for a very long time. We are extremely grateful for the partnership, collaboration, support, and shared commitments. Now, our panelists today are Jeffrey Christian, who is the managing director of CPM, which is Christian Precious Metals Group. And he is uniquely qualified to talk about the worth of substances, particularly precious substances, in the various marketplaces around the world. We are really pleased to have his expertise and his acuity bring to bear on this topic. Next, I'm delighted to welcome Pat Dombe, who is Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Government Relations of De Beers Group. I should say De Beers Group Global Site Holder Sales. And we are delighted to have her with us for the first time. And we know how important her contribution to this conversation will be. She has spent 30 years as a leader in these issues and has much to share with us. Next, I welcome Kyle Roderick. Kyle is the author of Bejeweled, The World of Ethical Jewelry, which is certainly among the first publications to consider, broadly put, ethical and jewelers. She is also the founder and steward of Bijou Review, which is an incredibly important Instagram site, and she is a frequent contributor to publications, among them Forbes, etc. And prior to beginning this aspect of her career, she was associated with GIA. Finally, I have the quote from the Speaker of the House, or the Monitor of the House, the distinct and high honor of welcoming Mickey Alam Khan as our moderator. Mickey is the founder and editor-in-chief of Luxury Daily. It is the world's leading luxury publication. It is available by subscription. It is a source of invaluable information. I read it every day, and we are delighted that he has agreed to bring his perspective as a leader in this conversation. So without further ado, and with sincere thanks to all of you, and also to everyone who is joining us today from wherever you may be, we welcome you, we wish you well, and we look forward to many times to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the wonderful introduction for the entire panel. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Very kind of you to spare this 1 hour with us. We were just running a bit behind, but we are going to have a fantastic session here. As Lisa mentioned, this webinar with De Beers is focused on the worth of gold and diamonds. Beautiful things need to be pure, not just in carat, but in heart. And that was said by, as she pointed out, Cherie Blair, who is the former British Prime Minister's wife, but she's also an eminent lawyer in her own right, and a highly brilliant woman. So the whole purpose of this discussion is to focus on how a jeweler or a brand's authentic expression of values affects the worth of gold and diamond jewelry. So it really is perception, and values matter a lot in this day and age, especially with the younger millennial and Gen X, Gen Z generations, and even the younger Gen Xers. So with that, I'd like to start with Jeffrey Christian. We are going to ask each one of the panelists to spend about 7 to 10 minutes talking about issues that are close to their core competency. And then we invite you to send in questions, and we'll try to take as many questions as possible. And everything here will be recorded, and Lisa and her team will be glad to send a link later on. So Jeffrey, welcome. Thank you so much for sparing some time. If you could just give us an idea of, when you're thinking about stores of value, how does gold hold up as an investment, and especially in the current context and over time? And then the second question is there any gold fund that places a premium on responsibly sourced gold being preferential as an investment? I have another sub-question, but I'd rather you take a stab at these, and then we'll ask.
Okay, let's start with the value of gold as an investment, you asked. So, I mean, gold has many functions in society. It's a monetary metal, it's a financial asset or investment. it's an adornment, and it's an industrial commodity. And you, I think, correctly want me to focus on investment command. There are a lot of misconceptions about gold that are very common in the world. One is that the gold price or the gold purchasing power of gold is stable over time, that an ounce of gold carries the same ability to buy goods and services in a stable fashion. That's not true. If you just look at the modern period of free gold prices from 1968 to the present, the purchasing power of gold on an indexed basis has ranged from about 20 or 16 to 100. So that the volatility of the purchasing power is quite high. You'll find people say, well, you know, you could buy a meal for 2 people at the River Room in the Savoy Hotel in London with an ounce of gold in 1917, and again in 1977, and again in 2006. And that was true. But in between, you could buy anything from less than a meal to a banquet for 17 people. And so the gold price, first off, is very volatile. It fluctuates, and both it fluctuates on a nominal basis and adjusted for inflation. The second thing to know about it is that over time, the value of gold has deteriorated sharply. The price is around $1,990 right now. It's at a record high in nominal terms. If you look at the price of gold over the last period and go take it back to 1700, that price would be equivalent to about, well, the price in 1700 would be equivalent to about $5,500 or $6,000 today. So the price of gold has actually fallen sharply over the last 400 years on a long-term basis, fluctuating as it goes down. And so the buying power of gold is not permanent. And those two things are not understood by many people in the gold market, including investors and people who tell investors that they should buy. The value of gold as an investment is that it is like a currency, and its value deteriorates over time. But if you look at currencies, if you look at the British pound from 1700 to today, if you look at the US dollar from 1800 till today, because it didn't exist in 1700, you see the same or similar patterns of deterioration. Anything that earns interest deteriorates over time. And gold and silver earn interest the same way currencies do. And the act of paying interest on an asset deteriorates its purchasing power. Adam Smith famously said in 1776 that one's wealth is not determined by the amount of gold or silver and cash that you have in your safe, but the amount of money that you have invested in productive assets that can earn more wealth or generate more wealth, because that's the nature of it. If you have sterile assets, whether it's a dollar or a pound sterling or a rand or any other currency or gold or silver, and it will deteriorate over time. So that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it, because they're all in the same boat. What it means is that you should have a diversified denominator of your wealth. You should have some of your wealth denominated in gold, some in silver, and some in other currencies, your own currency. Most people have all of their wealth in their own domestic currency. And that makes them extremely vulnerable to the ebb and flow, the rise and fall of their national government and their national economy. It's a very dangerous thing to do and to be, and you shouldn't be there. Yeah.
Okay.
So gold serves value by diversifying the denominator of your wealth. And it also serves value because it does rise and fall. And there are periods of time when you can make a lot of money through capital appreciation with the price rising. So the value of gold as an investment is that it diversifies your portfolio, your investment portfolio, and it diversifies your wealth. And you know, the other asset that's very good in this regard is real estate, but you can't pack up real estate and move to Canada when you don't like your president. You can pack up your gold and move if you really want. And a lot of people over the last 20 years have been moving their gold and their wealth from country to country. Americans have been moving their wealth overseas. British have been moving their wealth to the United States. So I think that that's the value of gold as an investment. Unfortunately, when it comes to gold funds, I think they're in stark contrast to what we'll hear from the other panelists in jewelry. I don't know of any gold fund that places a premium on responsibly sourced gold right now. There's a lot of lip service. There's a lot of lip service to investing in mining companies that follow environmental and social and governmental and regulatory guidelines. But I don't know of any gold fund that really puts a premium on it. And it's weird. I mean, I've been in the gold market since the 70s. And for many years, for many decades, one of the things about gold was its fungibility and its immutability. And you would buy a ring, and the joke or the story was that there could be gold in that ring from Cleopatra's gold, because gold doesn't get lost. And 90% of all of the 5.5 billion ounces of gold that's been mined over the course of history, 90% of it's still around, mostly in jewelry, but also in bullion and coin form. And so that gold was mingled, and for decades, that was a value to gold. Well, I could have some of Cleopatra's gold in my wedding ring. Now it's like, no, I have to have pure gold that's been mined at a sterile mine, that it follows all of the ESG policies and such. And that's one of the changes we've seen in the jewelry side. But in the mining and the investment side and the fund management side, you're not seeing that.
You mentioned jewelry. The same thing can be said for diamonds, right? I mean, are there stores of value? And, if in the old days, people, when they had to flee from wars or, insurrections, they'd always sew diamonds or gold coins into their vests and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, diamonds have also had a lot of value in terms of being able to convert into cash when necessary. So we also see that diamonds now at a low point. I mean, obviously, you've got lab grown and you've got real diamonds. What are your thoughts on diamonds as a store of value, and how would they compare to gold?
There's a big difference between diamonds and stones, semi-precious and precious stones, and gold and silver. And it goes back to what I was just talking about with the fungibility. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. And gold and diamonds both do very well as a store of value, except in extremely unsettled political times. So if you want to protect yourself from the vagaries of the economy and the political system, having some of your wealth in gold and some of your wealth in diamonds is very good. Where the relationship breaks down is if you have like a civil war or a revolution or a world war. Because gold is fungible, and if you need gold to buy your way out of your country or to buy your way out of trouble, you could take an ounce of gold to someone who will buy it, and virtually anybody will buy it. And they say, well, this isn't pure gold. Say, okay, I know that it costs $1.25 to refine impure gold into good delivery form. So knock $1.25 off of the $2,000, give me $1,985, and I'm on my way. With a diamond, the value is determined by a guy with an eye loop. And in that crisis moment, he knows that you need cash to get out of the country. So that diamond that you paid $10,000 for, that was really worth $10,000 5 years ago, might be worth $1,000 when it comes time to sell in that kind of emergency. So diamonds make sense as an investment like gold, except in those extreme situations. Now, in terms of the current diamond value, I mean, we have seen an explosion in diamond production on a global basis, and we have seen massive changes in consumer attitudes toward consumer luxury goods. And I think those two factors have led to a deterioration in gold, diamond prices on a current level, on a current basis. I do think that that's probably a cyclical factor. And I do think that diamonds, still make sense as an investment, except in those extreme situations.
Which would apply, of course, to gold too, if they know that you're highly vulnerable. I mean, we're assuming that obviously that everyone's going to pay a fair rate for that metal, the gold, But it's interesting. I was at a Christie's auction a few months ago when you could gather around people.
Mhm.
And the auctioneer told me something very interesting because they were auctioning off this 50 carat diamond. And then there were some other high carat diamonds there. And he said, one thing to remember, the best investments in diamonds are under 2 carats. Get any diamonds, a carat or 2 carats, because that's very easy to dispose of, as you pointed out, in emergencies and all that. But the more the carats, the less the ability to sell those diamonds, because then beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
There are many people who can afford a 1 or 2 carat diamond. There are very
Yes,
few people who can afford a 50 carat diamond.
exactly. So that's the point. Thank you, Jeffrey, and I'm sure we'll circle back with you with a couple of questions. But now we have Kyle Roderick, who knows a lot about jewelry. She's the author of a book called Bejeweled, which I recommend everyone buy. And Kyle, in your book, you've observed that luxurious ethical jewelry is virtually indistinguishable from other bejeweled ornaments. And your whole book is about ethical jewelry. So how do you define ethical jewelry? And, who are some of the jewelers you feel whose work embodies, this ethical component? Because, we've covered jewelers. Now, Tiffany just made the announcement yesterday, and obviously it follows up on what they said before, tracing diamonds from mine to settings. Pomellato is, again, obviously they're owned by Kering, so they've also got their own sustainability and transparency initiatives, and same with LVMH and all the other independent jewelers out there. So how would you define ethical jewelry?
Okay, well, first of all, the main point that I want to make at the outset is that it's visually indistinguishable from other types of jewelry. But what ethical jewelry, it's an umbrella portmanteau term for jewelry that has one or more of several distinct facts related to its origin and production. So to begin with, we have the case of ethical diamonds. We have many mines that exist now that are completely transparent in how they source, mine, conduct environmental remediation. Let's say they backfill a mine once a certain area has been mined out, and so they fill it up with land so that people can go ahead and use that land instead of leaving a scar in the earth. So there's that side of ethical jewelry. Mining companies that are extremely responsible environmentally to the point where they won't even mine on land that they know has diamonds because they want to preserve wildlife corridors and routes, such as the case in Canada with the Diavik mines. And those people are very careful to respect the wildlife corridors. Okay, then there's companies, we've got De Beers, who, by the way, thank you for helping sponsor this event today. They, for instance, have many different initiatives, like there's Forevermark. They are leaders because they have traceable stones. So that's a very type of ethical stone, because they have paperwork going all the way back to the mine that it originates from. Another type of ethical jewelry is fair mined gold or fair trade gold, which is an assurance system which is put in place to monitor the environmental impact of the mining and also the safety standards, et cetera, the community enrichment that results from the gold mining. And so these mines that satisfy those heavy, rigorous, how would you put it, standards, they get certified as creating a superior product because it's environmentally safer. It's not poisoning the communities. So that's another type of ethical jewelry. Yet another is the type of jewelry that exists it's a social enterprise system. So it's sold as a way of funding communities that make the jewelry, and the people who are actually producing it are they're nonprofits, you see. So what they are is it's a business model that is there to enrich communities, to give them a sustainable source of income. You see that with pearl farms in the Sea of Cortez, and so on. And so there you go. Those are the main types.
What about, I mean, is this demand for ethical jewelry coming from consumers, or is it being led by marketers? Because in our case, we do see that marketers are taking the lead. Like you mentioned De Beers,
Well, Forevermark made a big step. Yes.
Exactly. So, I mean, how much of it is the marketer taking the initiative and then consumers becoming more aware of it, and then that basically leads to a general demand for ethical jewelry and transparency and traceability?
Well, Mickey, I wish I could quantify exactly how much marketers are driving this. I can't do it in terms of percentages, but what I can say is that the companies that are most interested in creating relationships with people of all generations and also different socioeconomic levels, they are realizing we have a great opportunity right now to communicate to people why either our diamonds, our colored stones, our gold is a really good product because it makes sense for the planet, for the communities that mine it, and for the shoppers and jewelry lovers who either buy it or gift it. And on the part of the consumers, to answer about consumers, definitely the research that I've read, there's been some very large studies, which I'm sure you've read these too, where they go global region by global region. And they're surveying millennials, they're surveying different age groups. And you can see the studies show, I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands of people who've been queried. Even people in Asia Pacific region, millennials, people who were, 30, in their 30s and down to age 21, these people are willing to pay, they claim they're willing to pay slightly higher prices, maybe like a 15% higher, if they know they're getting a piece of jewelry that has documentation as being sustainably produced and the people who produced it were paid fairly, and there's education provided for their communities. So
great. It reminds me of an event that Lisa hosted a few years ago, and she had Eileen Fisher, who is very well known. And Eileen, this question was asked of Eileen: would anybody, what about organic, products and your line? And so she said she loves the notion of organic and is great, but it does cost more. And she did find that customers showed some price resistance to paying for organic products. And I know that with jewelry, it's probably going to become pretty much uniform and standard in a few years. It's going to become an expectation, so we may not have that. But in fashion, you still have, organic and non-organic stuff. But
That's
So good.
absolutely correct. But what I wanted to say, it's so funny because Lauren Titelli, who has a completely fair mind gold output, she's one of the designers who has a chapter in my book. Her company is called Lauren Nicole. She told me that, she uses all fair mind gold. She said, because the pieces that she makes are small, like she's never making like a 10 ounce or an 11, huge, heavy piece of, she said that the price difference, it's not even that much. You don't even notice it. And her clients are so, people actually, she says, they find her through Instagram, number one, which is interesting. So they're buying directly from her, and they are collecting her because they know that she uses certified Fairmine gold. And Lauren likes using it. The reason why as a goldsmith she uses it is because she knows that these fair trade gold, Fairmine gold, they provide artisanal mining cooperatives in remote areas in Peru, Colombia, etc., to environmentally protect their business and their communities, because they're not dumping mercury in the river or whatever. They're using chemicals in a responsible way to get their gold produced. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Great, excellent. And we are going to hear, I know before we go to Pat, we're also going to, right after Pat, we're going to hear from Catherine Saar, who's kindly joined. And, she's the founder of her own line of jewelry, Almasika Fine Jewelry. So I'm curious to see, how she approaches, jewelry and ethics. But Kyle, thank you so much. And, we'll come back with a question or two. But, Pat, it's over to you. And, De Beers obviously is the leading diamond producer worldwide. And I think De Beers can take full credit for pioneering the engagement ring as we know it today, with, the diamond as the main thing that'll make, a girl really happy. I shouldn't say a girl nowadays. I'll get into trouble, a woman. But anyway, so, how, as a leading producer of diamonds and rough diamonds across the value chain, how would you describe the worth of diamonds today and what they represent? I mean, what's it?
Thanks, Mickey. I loved Kyle's. She actually gave me the introduction to give some practicality to the process of sustainability. And talking about heart, I think that's one of our ethoses within De Beers. Everything is done with heart across our producing countries. We really believe the value of a diamond is directly entwined with a few critical factors that I think Kyle went into, and I'm going to give some practicality and some examples of that. So firstly, when we talk about how a diamond is mined, our view is that no diamond is worth a life. We start with livelihood. We really ensure that each diamond is mined safe and transparent, and most importantly, in a way that upholds the things that Kyle was talking about, human rights, environmental considerations, and is mined with the highest industry standards. Secondly, I think it's really important that we talk about the difference a diamond can make to a community. And I really want to get into that. I am from Botswana, so I am passionate about the impact that diamonds have had in one of the leading countries of the world in terms of producing diamonds. And so I speak from the heart, and I worked, I believe, for a company that really focuses on the communities in which we reside and demonstrates that every single day through our people, our systems, our operations. And if we talk about the impact, I'm an example of that impact. And there are thousands of me in Botswana, in Namibia, in South Africa, and in Canada, in terms of how a diamond makes an impact through heart. As one of our key business imperatives, We invest in the communities in which we reside. And we really focus on this. Our focus is investing beyond diamonds. I think that's the way to put it. And I want to give you some examples of this. These are real. And I would encourage everybody who's watching, please come to Botswana, please go to Namibia, please go to South Africa, go to Canada, and see it for yourself where we are. We invest in job creation. It is so important that we create that socioeconomic impact in the communities in which we're in. And Mickey, you can call me a girl forever. I'm happy to be called a girl.
Well,
We invest in women and girls through our UN Women Partnership. And you can imagine how important it is that we follow the protocols and standards that are strictly set by UN Women, particularly focused on accelerating women-owned micro-enterprises. We also invest in our employees, and our employees take that role in terms of our values. They give their time in the communities and the initiatives that we have. And we fund several sustainable programs that are focused in our producing countries on youth entrepreneurship, particularly in Africa. As you know, we have a huge population of young people in Africa. So youth entrepreneurship and skills development is primary to our investment in terms of sustainability. And with that,
sorry, go ahead.
And with that comes capacity building, obviously, both in our industry in terms of skills development and also in research and development outside the industry. And then I think the other thing to mention is that we invest significantly in NGOs. In this very challenging time right now with COVID, gender-based violence is evident in a lot of our communities and is growing the longer we are in this situation. And supporting some of these NGOs is so important to us when we talk about women and we talk about girls and we talk about the communities. So engagement with these NGOs and of course, protecting the natural world is really important to us.
It's interesting you mentioned these NGOs because during the core of the lockdown period, Bulgari and Caring, Pomelato, and including De Beers, and then quite a few other jewelers stepped up their donations to women's causes because guess what? Unfortunately, they were getting bashed up at home. And the abuse level had just reached a point in Italy where Gucci and all these guys ran a lot of campaigns to just make people more aware that, the situation had basically just reached alarming proportions. Coming back to values, looking at other jewelry brands, how do you make sure that they communicate the values properly? And I have an interesting point because I know that in the old days, men used to give a lot of jewelry to women, right? I mean, to mark certain milestones. So when you talk about values, are we communicating the values to men the way we are communicating to women? Because now we're in the self-gifting phase too, right? So how should jewelry brands tackle that? Because if you're looking at a wedding band or an engagement ring, it's typically the man who buys it. Is the man that particular or well-informed about ethics and fair trade or fair mind compared to women? So love for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Kyle mentioned it that the consumer today is so discerning. They have refined tastes. They're very conscious about what they buy, what they wear, what they eat, what brands they associate themselves with. and believe in terms of sustainable and ethical purchases. So values is really, really important. And to us at De Beers, we stand by our values. It's in our ethos, safety first, show we care, shaping the world, build trust is a critical value to that. And of course, being passionate. This is the heart that underpins all those values. And if you look at within our ecosystem, at De Beers, as well as the countries in which we're in, responsible sourcing means that every journey of a diamond from mine to finger is crucial for a consumer in terms of transparency and provenance. And I really like to get into the idea and understanding of what provenance means, because I think it means different things to different people. So I just want to highlight how we take provenance. From our perspective, it's about the how, the what, and the who. The how in terms of the practices, which is really about our values, how we practice our responsible sourcing. But the what is so important in terms of authenticity. And I love talking about this because I believe that there are many of us who are authentic and are products of that process. And then the whom is definitely, our consumer, our stakeholders, and the community. So I think that, this guarantees a sense of value creation and liquidity in that process, and also guarantees our process in terms of the upholding of ethical practices and the SDGs as we know them. And Nikki, if you can just, I'd just like to use this example because we're talking to the jewelry industry. And this is something that I am very passionate about. So if you'll allow me just to talk about this initiative that we have as an example of jewelry design. Over 20 years ago, De Beers invested in an initiative that was started by one of our group executive vice presidents, Stephen Lassier, who you probably know. Yes. Kyle talked about Forever Mark, etc. And his vision was to really look at how do we get young people in the producing countries to get into the downstream of our business. When you're talking to Katerina, I'm sure that this will have touched your heart when you got into design, which we call the De Beers Group Designers Initiative. And this initiative runs across all 4 countries and is focusing on unearthing talent in the jewelry design space for young designers, millennials. And regardless of whether they've had formal or informal training, particularly in Africa, if you think about design, it's part of our culture. It's embedded with the stories, the music, the clothes, food, and just the whole cultural element of who we are and how we adorn ourselves. And, the winners of this contest, it goes through a whole process, get the opportunity to go to one of the top jewelry design schools in the world in Milan, working with our Forever Mark team there. Now, that's a great opportunity to open up jewelry design and skills development in an area, in a country where there was only focus on the mining side. And now we're looking at the opportunity of opening opportunities for our young designers in our countries, in our producing countries, into the diamond journey, the jewelry journey. And several of these alumni have ended up in working in their homes and setting up their own businesses and operating in a sustainable way because they've had that ethos and the values that we've transferred to them. And so I just wanted to share that as an example.
That's excellent. And, I hope we get some questions from the audience probing that issue further, because I know that when we started a few minutes late, so if the audience can stick with us for another We are supposed to wrap at, I believe, 1:30, right? Lisa, 1:30?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we might just extend it by another 5 minutes for more questions. Pat, we'll come back to you. Thank you so much. And you mentioned young designers, and you mentioned, entrepreneurs, and obviously we are saving the best for the last for the entrepreneur there. And I will let Lisa make a fulsome introduction to Catherine Saar, who is the founder of Almasica Fine Jewelry, and then I'll get back to asking and being nosy.
I'm particularly delighted to welcome Catherine to this webinar because, in a way, she is part of what hold the future in our hands, not generationally, although that too, but because it is not only that we are looking for pure in carat and pure in heart, but we are also looking for greatness in design and beauty in execution. And Catherine, who is by birth French, and was educated in the UK, educated in France, pardon me, and then decided to go to the UK and became, if you will, a De Beers and World Gold Council alum, having been involved in the campaign Love Gold. And she started her own design brand in 2014. It was launched at the French boutique, legendary boutique called Corette. And Almasica has wonderful linguistic roots. It means diamond in Swahili. And Sika means gold in several West African languages. So we could not be in better hands to explore the world of design and responsible practice and sourcing. And there's one thing I'd just like to throw in there, which is that we're celebrating this year, we did the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And many of the Gen Z and Gen X to whom we are referring are the children of, if you will, the baby boomers. And baby boomers actually announced a commitment to planet Earth and swelled the streets in 1970. So the seeds of this were planted, and it is not only the younger generations that we are looking to, but it is everyone. It is world domination for good.
Oh, great.
That I introduced Catherine, whom I'm
Great.
so excited to hear.
Great. Thank you so much. Remind me of a James Bond movie with that line. He used that line, right? World domination, the same old thing. So
We are passionate.
Well, thank you. So Catherine, you've had a fantastic intro, and you've got your own fine jewelry line. If you could just give us an idea of the values that back the creation of your jewelry and the way you market it and target from scratch to finished product. What is the process? And if you could just start by giving us an idea of what made you go into this. I know that you have a background in jewelry and gold and diamonds, but to launch on your own is fairly bold, especially in an industry full of giants.
Yes. Thank you very much for the great introduction. It has been a great conversation so far. I want to answer your question by developing on the word and the name Almasica. So Lisa told us that Almasi means diamond in Swahili, and Swahili, it's a language spoken throughout East Africa in several countries. And Sika, the word for gold, is from several languages in West Africa as well. And I've been deliberate in choosing some words that have the same meaning in different cultures, because that search for commonality is really something that is at the heart of Almasica, and it's linked to my personal story. Lisa said that I was born in Paris. I lived 10 years in London, where I worked in the fine jewelry industry. And then from there, I lived in sunny Abu Dhabi, and now I live in Chicago with my 4 children and a husband. But really in that journey and across the world, what I've kept is that in every single people I've met from all walks of life, I've managed to connect with them. I've managed to see what we have in common. And really, I realized that we have much more that unites us that separates us. And that's the essence of Almasica. And in the design, it translates by finding all those forms, symbols, stories that are common to many cultures. So, yeah, of course, the jewelers, the consumers and people who buy Almasica are attracted by the jewelry. But what I've noticed is that the moment I've started to express that mission, Mickey, you'll be surprised to know that it's actually what really attracts people, that mission, and they feel really strongly and passionate about it. And we talked about the design, we talked about the material and the source. And for me, design takes a critical part. With a name like Almasica, gold and diamonds, I narrowed my scope. So I work with gold and I work with diamonds for now. But the design is critical because in today's context, I really believe that not one culture should supersede cultures. I felt that we have a voice, and I'm really passionate about finding that universality. I work a lot with circles and round, and I always say that I like to find our overlapping circles in cultures. And really, when I talk about universalism and what I'm searching is really about what you will be attracted as human, regardless of your culture. So that has been my mission, and this is why I've created Almasica, really for that cultural element, going behind the diamonds, behind the gold, and looking into cultures.
What type of jewelry do you make?
I make 18-karat gold jewelry that are inspired by form and symbol that you find in many cultures. So my first collection was around the cowrie shell. That is very important in African cultures. And then I discovered that actually was important in many other cultures with the symbol of spirituality and prosperity. And my several collection all has that common element of being common to many cultures in terms of design.
And do you sell wholesale as well as retail, online?
Yeah. So wholesale, Lisa said now, we were very lucky that this cultural element beyond the design was very attractive, and we went to Colette, who's not closed in Paris, and then we are in several retailers. But we also saw that being able to communicate directly with our customer through the website and telling stories and all the wonderful women who wears and buy Almasica for themselves, we have a lot of them. Online was a very, very important route. And before COVID, I was holding a lot of trunk shows in conjunction with art institutions, either collectors or museum or galleries. And again, that was a very good opportunity for me to really explain the stories and the inspiration.
How has COVID changed things for you?
So COVID meant that people and jewelry buyer are very considerate about their jewelry choice. And this is something because of how we started. We always had that kind of customer, of people who wanted a bit more from their jewelry, and the story side and the cultural and sometimes spiritual element was very important. So in terms of who we sell to and who we speak to hasn't really changed. It's more about the many people that are coming to us right now, who are now looking for what we've been doing and what I've been doing for the first day.
I can safely say for everybody that we're all trying to reinvent ourselves one way or the other, or adapt ourselves, if not reinvent, just adapt ourselves to new circumstances. And it's very admirable to hear Catherine, being strong and stoic and, going with the flow. But, now that we've heard from everybody, we've got a whole list of questions from the audience. And I would love to start with this question. It's a bit lengthy, but it's from Jeannie Walls, and she asked, the worth of diamonds can be both underinflated and overinflated. The concern going forward is, for me, not that the worth may be underinflated. This is already the case given the knock-on effects of the pandemic outbreak, but that the recovery measures may escalate to an unsustainable overinflation. I have full confidence in the recovery of the diamond market. However, premature overinflation may result in a long-term deficit in market appetite. What's your thoughts on this insofar as maintaining a true, sustainable diamonds market commensurate with its representative strength as a symbol of life and prosperity? I was wondering, if Pat, if you could take a stab at it, and followed by Jeffrey. And then everybody else can chime in. But very quickly, we'd like to, we've got about 7 questions, so a minute a question.
You know, I'm not actually concerned about overall price inflation. You know, we've seen this enormous money supply, but I think that price deflation is a bigger long-term risk for the world for a variety of long-term economic reasons that I won't bore you with. So I'm not quite sure that we'll see price inflation. I think that the value of diamonds will reflect more of the supply and demand for diamonds. And you know, one of the things that I'm watching to see is if with the lower prices now, we can see a rejuvenation of demand for diamond jewelry from people with less income than others, you know, to middle class and lower middle class people, to see if we stimulate a broader demand for diamond jewelry, which I think would be critical to having a more sustainable gold price or diamond price.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. Pat, your take on this?
Yeah, you know, there are too many uncertainties for anyone to be able to give, I think Jeff said it, meaningful predictions. Yeah. No one at this stage knows what the eventual impact of the crisis will be on rough supply, on economic conditions, consumer demand, etc. As such, it's really impossible to predict what will happen to prices. However, what I can say is that with certainty, you know, within our culture, within De Beers, we take a responsible and long-term approach to pricing. I think it's very important for us, as we always have. And the medium to long-term outlook for natural diamonds remains very positive. And we're seeing that the demand fundamentally remains favorable, I believe, and the attributes, we believe, and not just me, but as a company, and the attributes of natural diamonds, you know, store of value, as Jeff talked about, Kyle also covered on that, the symbolic of connections. I know I'm emotional about it, and I'm sure all the women are who are listening. Used as a token of appreciation of one that you love. All that leaves diamonds in a strong position.
You know, it reminds me, when you're marketing, I know that most companies have basically cut back on their marketing during this pandemic period. They don't want to basically look flashy and, you know, promote diamonds when everybody else is, you know, struggling. But one thing that struck me was what I heard someone say in the fashion world. And he said that the goal is not to dress up to go to work. The goal is to dress up to just step outside, go out. So, you know, maybe you have to, you know, I'm not saying from room to room or from room to garden, but maybe we should change the context of where, you know, jewelry can be worn. I mean, you could have, I mean, I know it's a bit frivolous, but, you know, even if you're stepping out to do a grocery run, you know, put on something that makes you feel better about yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, it's these little things about their culture, basically, you know, it's these little things are culture. And that's what makes life so beautiful. You know, I remember once Prince Charles was asked about why he was so concerned about the Gaelic language. And, Gaelic is spoken by a few tens of thousands of people in Scotland. And he said, they said that, you're basically asking for tens of millions of pounds to keep that language alive. And he said that if you don't care about these mortal things, then why bother with opera? Because that, again, is enjoyed by a very minuscule percentage of your population worldwide. So this is where I feel that jewelry should also take that approach, is, these are the small, finer things of life where you enjoy life and, you feel good about yourself. Anyways, I have another question. Is there a difference in the way genders approach issues of sustainability in purchasing jewelry? Now, I already alluded to that. How do you differentiate between men and women? And why don't we go with Kyle on that? So I'll repeat the question. Is there a difference in the way genders approach issues of sustainability in purchasing jewelry?
I think the best way to answer that is to break it down to, are these people who are readers? Are they informed? Do they tend to be high information people? Because in the jewelry world, most retailers and designers who I deal with tell me that there's basically 3 types of customers, and it's not about gender so much as it is about your information level. So I don't think there is.
Great. What about you, Catherine?
I agree. I think it depends also on the purchase. I know that, and I've noticed that when it comes to engagement ring, whether it's the man or the woman, they're very, very concerned about the provenance. I think because for them it represents love, and they want to make sure that love has been shared throughout the journey. So, and this comes to really the level of education and care more than being, a gender.
I remember many years ago when I used to propose to my then wife, now ex-wife. The question, I was on the phone with my mother, and I was outside Tiffany's. I was running in and out. I couldn't make sense of all those grades and all that. Every time I went for a better diamond, the price jumped up dramatically. And, there was nothing to educate a guy like me, except for the size. And then they had the D, the various grades, and I forget all that stuff. But so a guy like me was standing outside Tiffany's panicking. I said, what do I do? I said, if I go for this 1 more carat, that's it. I mean, I don't know. I run out of all the cash I have right now. So, she said, all right, do this. So I think even for sustainability and all that, we need that. What Catherine said is absolutely right. The education has to be tremendous. I mean, Pat, would you agree on that?
Absolutely. The importance, but I don't know when you were married.
I shan't date myself.
But I do think that consumers are becoming, they want to know. It is the discerning consumer is the best consumer for us, because they will ask the hard questions. They will ask provenance, and that's what we want. We want them to feel understand the journey that diamond has made to get to, let me buy this one, for all the right reasons, for the heart reasons, for the sustainable reasons, for why you're selecting that diamond. So, I think the process of a consumer right now is to really review and ask those questions before they feel good about that purchase. So absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it tells you a diamond's worth. I got my wedding band back, which, is not worth much. That was Cartier. But I never got the diamond engagement ring back. I was told, heck no. So I said, okay, fine. Another question was, do you worry that customers might look at the work brands and jewelers are doing cynically, and then can be done to persuade them that companies talking about ethical practices are not only doing so to drive sales? So basically, this is almost a version of whitewashing, right? Greenwashing. And I mean, I should say it's greenwashing more or less. So, some people may be paying lip service. It's very hard to trace unless you use blockchain and some technology like that, which is probably becoming the de facto standard now. But how do you communicate that you're not just jumping on a bandwagon? Maybe Jeffrey, you take that, and then we go with Kyle.
I was working with some people developing a North American emerald mine about 15 years ago. And the idea was, and with emeralds, you can look at the chemical composition and you can actually say this is the provenance of that emerald. And we were working on this with the idea of being able to source North American clean emeralds. You know, they don't come from Afghanistan, they don't come from Colombia, they don't come from Central Africa, they're not involved in blood or drugs or revolution. And it was very interesting because as we were moving forward, I got calls from people from Afghanistan and Zambia and Zaire saying, what kind of certification do you need for the emeralds to be from the United States? Because we can give you that certification.
Oh my God.
So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. And that was 15 years ago. So the world has gotten better. But it is something that you really have to watch for, especially when it comes to precious metals. And we have seen a couple things in gold and silver of recently, a couple scandals of refineries being caught out, not really doing their due diligence on the sourcing of their product.
Great, thank you. Kyle?
Okay, well, in the case of, if I understand the question,
just for marketing, and it's not really genuine.
well, but there are ways for consumers to determine whether or not something is hooey or is totally traceable and well documented. So I would begin with, for instance, when you're a customer, a shopper, you go to, first of all, the really good companies, their websites are extremely informative and extremely, they'll tell the story about the documentation and the origin of their diamonds, the origin of their golds. In the case of, I want consumers who are listening in today to know that these third-party certification systems, the Fair Trade Gold, the Fair Mine Gold, these are very rigorous. I mean, it takes years for some of these mines to become certified in the case of those gold mines. Okay, in the case of these diamond companies, they're not going to commit fraud. I mean, the really good companies, I don't think you've got to worry about somebody who has a website and they're explaining, okay, our diamonds come from this mine in Canada. There's always going to be people who are committing fraud. We know this.
Yes.
I mean, this is inherent in any culture. But as a consumer, if you're worried that you're getting a snow job, do your research and, call their customer service people, send in questions to them. Like in the case of the Caring Group, which owns Palmolato, you referred to them previously,
Yes,
Gucci,
Gucci.
Bottega Veneta, on and on. They've made a commitment. They use a super high percentage of fair mined gold in their, I mean, they've made huge commitments. And so if you're curious to know whether one of these big global companies is really selling you something that's ethical and sustainable, go on their websites, look for their corporate social responsibility statements. Tiffany also, by the way, also makes a booklet now, How to Buy a Diamond.
Yes, I got that, but it was after buying it. So
I hope that answers your question.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm sure Pat has something to say because, they've got Forevermark as their consumer-facing brand.
Yes.
So Pat, how does it work for Forevermark?
I think just it's a really important question because the evolution is towards innovation and technology, isn't it?
Yes.
Really, innovation is crucial to the process, and the blockchain technology that we've created is just for that, to be able to find where a diamond begins and where it ends up on the finger. And so I think that technology and innovation is becoming more and more sophisticated. It answers to the discerning consumer without a doubt, and that it will continue to grow. I think the pandemic has probably accelerated some elements of that now, and will become more important and become the center of how the consumer approaches an assessment of our products, of our diamonds, and that the utilization of technologies such as ours, like Tracer, will become even more important to that whole process.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. And before I go to the next question, I'd like Catherine, I mean, do you give some booklet? Obviously, your website has information, but what do you do to convey to the consumer that, you know, this was a work of craftsmanship, came from a good place?
So our approach to sustainability, and I will say also impact on our society, was not really an afterthought. It was really built from the beginning of the brand. When I was looking for workshop and suppliers, I obviously had insider knowledge, but I built that in the source of the diamonds and the gold, and even how the jewelry is made and where it's made. And that has been intentional. That has been always been communicated from the very beginning to our customer, and was very important to them. And I want to answer also the previous question about the customer. I think I center everything on that discerning customer. Today in 2020, there's no customer who just believe a press release. I think the word is accountability. Whenever we put something out, we know it's going to be checked and rechecked and checked again, not by a third-party source. It's going to be checked by a buyer and another buyer, and this is the word in 2020. I think nobody should rely on their press release to do the job. It's really about communicating with your customer all the time, whether it's an Instagram post, a DM. You have to be available all the time and tell the truth, because if you don't tell the truth, everybody will know very, very soon.
Great, thank you.
Communication well.
Thank you. Now I'm going to give us, since we've gone a bit easy, let's take a hard one, which is about a tech industry thing. How will the industry begin to adopt the ICGLR's 3TG certification requirements across different upstream, midstream, and downstream value chain segments? So who would like to take that?
I don't know
would Pat like to take that, and then Jeffrey, you take that?
Jeffrey should take that.
Oh, Jeffrey, you take that.
That's outside of my realm of influence.
Okay. We are going to get back to you on that. Lisa, probably if you can have a written response from someone on that. So what?
It will also be taken up in subsequent webinars.
Wonderful. As they say in some countries, please do the needful. What is the strategy to combat or mitigate the growing market for synthetic diamonds? So we'll start from an industry observer, and then we'll go to Pat. So Kyle, why don't you start first?
Well, in the case of in the United States, the Federal Trade Commission is doing its part by calling out marketers of synthetic diamonds who were representing in their promotions that these diamonds are equivalent in a material sense, in every possible sense, you know, but at the end of the day, we've got to realize that a diamond that comes out of the ground in Botswana is the result of, you know, hundreds of millions of years of earth science occurrences, and this is a natural product. This is, if you will, a miracle of nature. A industrial or synthetic diamond requires a tremendous amount of electricity power to be made. In the case of the ones that are made in China, I mean, it's coal-fired plants,
Yeah.
that are helping produce these things. I mean, and this is an industrial product, okay? It's an industrial product made at a tremendous environmental cost, unless you've got some kind of completely solar powered, I don't know what, factory, So that's the FTC is playing its part by warning these people and sending them letters and saying, you will be legally liable for committing fraud, consumer fraud. They're trying to do what they can to protect. But moreover, with social media, I would like to say that Instagram and Facebook and blogs are helping natural diamond producers and natural diamond shoppers and people who are concerned about this, retailers, etc. They're imparting information, with citations. And so it's evidence-based. There's a lot of evidence-based blogs out there. There's evidence-based Instagram sites that talk a lot about this problem of synthetic diamonds trying to say, well, we're the same as natural diamonds. They're not.
It reminds me of the same issue you face in the fashion world with fur and fur and faux fur. And, there are arguments for both.
Environmental problems.
Exactly. And, one is fur, obviously, there's the toll on the animals. And faux fur, you're talking about petroleum-based products that will take a long time to degrade. So, I mean, it's, both sides to the issue. So, Pat, what's your take on synthetic diamonds and lab-grown diamonds, and where is De Beers in that? Because I think De Beers also is coming out of the product, right?
Well,
Yes.
Right?
Lightbox.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, lab grown are not diamonds. So that's the first thing. Okay. I come from a country that has real diamonds. And at De Beers, so that's the first thing I want to clear. And, the current crisis has highlighted, I think, the importance of connection in people's lives, as well as the value of relationships with loved ones, as you mentioned, getting dressed up and what does that mean, and being able to embrace that with a loved one. And these are indelibly linked with natural diamonds and their symbolism, not lab grown. Right. So, and I think following since the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, consumers expressed a strong desire for products that represent a store of value. Fewer, as you mentioned, but better. And it's not unreasonable to anticipate the same thing now, so all of this suggests that the attributes of natural diamonds, rather diamonds, okay, put them in a better place than LGDs following the crisis.
I think we are pretty close to wrapping up. I would like everyone to just, 30 seconds. A lot of young designers and jewelers are struggling today because of COVID. They may have graduated from school. There are also established independent jewelers who basically need support. And the way things are going, I mean, we expect to see economies to basically be on the mend for the next 3 or 4 months. But, we don't know till the vaccine's out and people feel safe mingling. So what advice would you give jewelers, budding jewelers, independent jewelers, kids who have just graduated from these schools and want to enter this world of gold and diamonds? So why don't we start with Catherine, and then we'll go to Kyle, and then we'll go to Jeffrey, and then we'll wrap with Pat. And after that, I'll give Lisa the final word. So we need 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, try. This is my, I will say, second crisis. I will say I lived 2008, and for anybody, what makes you and helps you with the day-to-day passion. I have a real passion for jewelry, but also the mission that I'm trying to accomplish in terms of culture and really bring people together. So I think this is what is going to get me through the months coming.
Excellent. Wonderful. We wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Kyle.
Well, I would say to makers and designers, retailers, start where you are, tell your story, never stop talking about why your jewels are really the best possible product for people who care about human connection, environmental sustainability, and also just integrity, in the broadest possible sense. Never stop telling your story and start where you are, pivot, use social media to sell direct to consumer if you can't get people coming into your stores as much as they used to in the past.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Jeffrey?
We are at a time as a world that may be on the cusp of major transformational changes, the kind of changes that we saw at the end of the Middle Ages, the kind of changes that we saw with the French and US revolutions. But maybe we're not. If you go back to 2008, 2009, a lot of people thought that would lead to large secular semi-permanent changes in the way people lived. And 4 or 5 years down the road, there have been some changes, but a lot of things normalized. My suspicion is that 4 or 5 years down the road, a lot of things will have normalized. But we are at a pivot point, as Kyle said, where everything might change. And I think that anybody, you don't have to be young, you can be old, everybody has to be extremely sensitive to the potential that the markets they work in, the industries they work in, the people they sell to are up for redefinition. And you've got to build that flexibility, and that flexibility has to be informed by insights from the real world, not the punditry.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Pat, I should thank Pat De Beers was kind enough to sponsor this webinar. So thank you very much, Pat. Your take?
I think just taking what everybody has said for our young designers and future designers, authenticity is going to be everything. And I think we're seeing it in whether you call it a reset or a transformation. Consciousness has become the primary factor. Emotion, things that are real, and responsibility. So I think in 30 seconds or less, young people, brands must live by the values that are embedded in this.
I totally agree. I'm going to hand it over before I hand it over to Lisa, our hostess, and I highly recommend Lisa's conferences when, it's safe to have more than, well, what's the rule now? I think 20 people, 30 people in a room. I'd say attending her conferences is like attending a PhD in one day. I mean, it's your thesis in one day, basically. But I'd say that values matter because they're standards. And you have to stay true to your standards and values. Because at the end of the day, that is basically your core and your moral fiber. And in terms of changes, I'm fairly certain, knowing human nature, we'll revert to some bad habits and we'll pick up some new habits. But what I've learned over the last 15 to 20 years, that the biggest catalyst now for change is technology. We are doing this on Zoom, and we have a wonderful panel connecting from all over the world. And right here, if you look at the 6 people on board and the 3 or 4 hidden, you're looking at about people who have lived in about 20 or 15 or 20 countries and who have nationalities that are dual, triple, whatever. And technology enables us all to come together. So I think for jewelers, they should make technology their best friend right now and make sure that, it's a values-based, technology-driven approach. And with that, thank you very much, folks. I'll give Lisa Konigsberg the final word.
Thank you all for a wonderful conversation, extraordinarily stimulating. A couple of things I'd like to say. First off, thank you all for staying with us. We are running a bit over time due to our technical glitch at the beginning, and we're very grateful to you all for, if you, as they say, hanging in there with us. And secondly, I'd like to mention that our next webinar is September 23rd. It is titled The Power of Words, and it will take up some of the issues that were mentioned in this webinar, including issues pertaining to lab grown and terms like how you can use terms such as sustainable and ethical. And I could talk about these topics all day. I know we all have to go. I'd like to leave you with regard to the meaning of jewelry with something my daughter once said to me. I was feeling rather low, and she said to me, "Oh, come on, Mom. Put on your earrings. You'll feel so much better." To us. We wear it for us. We don't need to go out. We need only to look at the ring on our hand, perhaps, or the pendant around our neck that may have been given us by a loved one. Jewelry is, and the instinct to adorn and to confer value and power to that adornment is one of the oldest innate human instincts. So hold on to your love, put on your earrings. We hope very much to see you on September 23rd. Thank you all, you splendid panelists. We look forward to welcoming you back, and warmest thoughts for the rest of your day, wherever you may be.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Pat.
Thank you.